Alright, we've got level 4 spells to cover. Let's get rolling, folks. Hello there, everyone, and welcome back down here to the Gamer's Den with me, your host, Jordan, your master of lore and storyteller extraordinaire, bringing you our 4th level spell guide for the 1st edition Pathfinder Cleric. We are going to be diving into those very shortly, but if you're new here to the channel, go on down there, hit the subscribe button, and become a regular member here at the Gamer's Den. Or if you've already gone on ahead and listed yourself on such an incredible roster of legendary heroes, then why not go down there to hit the like button and share the video far and wide. Now we'll start diving into this. So, for your 4th level spells as a cleric, one of the first things you're going to want to pick up is Airwalk. Touch target creature, and for 10 minutes per caster level, they can ascend into the air at half their normal movement rate. When the spell ends or is dispelled, you descend safely at a rate of 60 feet per round for 1d6 rounds, after which you will fall, taking the usual amounts of damage for fall damage, depending on how high up you are. But you can train mounts to move this way with 1 week of training and a DC 25 animal handling check. This can end up trumping fly in very many instances. One, the duration is fantastic, so even though the movement rate isn't the fastest, it still is something that is going to get many of your allies into the air. Also, the fact that it has a safety feature that at least lowers you a decent distance to the ground, because, sure, if you're 300 feet up, only descending, 60 feet less at 240 feet isn't going to spare you a whole lot of damage, but it's certainly better than doing nothing, and the fact that you could probably conceivably end up with at least 3 rounds of this, it really starts to increase your odds of surviving. Just, roll for low damage. And then being able to train different animals, different mounts to be able to move with this spell, to get comfortable with it, that's really fantastic, especially if your DM allows you to have a more exotic mount or creature to use as a mount. So that's just going to depend. It's going to be a fair bit situational, but Airwalk all the way around is pretty fantastic for you. And again, because you're a divine spellcaster, you automatically know all of these spells, so you are going to be sitting pretty in comparison to several other spellcasting classes. Next, we have Restoration. This works as lesser restoration, but also removes temporary negative levels or 1 permanent negative level. There is a week-long period between the amount of time that you can use this spell on a single target at any given time. This also cures all temporary ability damage and restores ability damage for 1 ability score, and that's permanent ability damage. So all the way around, Restoration is a significant upgrade. It's not something that you're going to have prepared daily unless you know specifically that these kinds of threats are possible, because damage to an ability score that's permanent is going to be devastating, even at these levels when you get access to 4th level spells, because if your fighter, barbarian, paladin, whoever is your frontline person takes a bunch of strength damage from shadows, let's say, that's really going to impact their ability to help the rest of the party. So having this handy maybe even a couple of times in that instance could be more important, but use your intuition, try to measure things out. This is going to be one of those things that you have for after a fight more often than not. If you can pick them up as scrolls, fantastic, or if you have a staff that has a few charges that you can spend restoration towards, then that'll work out pretty nicely, even if it's not the most permanent of solutions. Still, an incredible spell to have. You need this kind of a panacea. And then next, we have Blessing of Fervor, which is going to be fantastic for you and your allies. Target 1 creature per caster level, no 2 of which can be more than 30 feet apart. And for 1 round per caster level, you increase their base speed by 30 feet. They can stand up as a swift action without provoking attacks of opportunity. They can make 1 extra attack as part of a full attack action using their highest base attack bonus, so like haste, but this does not stack with haste either. You also gain a +2 bonus on attack rolls, which that is an untyped bonus, so that should stack with just about anything, and a +2 dodge bonus on armor class and reflex save. So that's nice when that comes up, but a dodge bonus means that this is not going to stack with other sources that might give you a dodge bonus, like the dodge feat as an example. And this also allows the beneficiary to cast a single spell of 2nd level or lower as if it were enlarged, extended, silent, or still. So that's an incredible amount of utility right there across several classes, basically every class. And while 2nd level or lower spells aren't going to amount to consistently amount to as much as 3rd or 4th level spells will, the fact that you can apply any of these feats to the spell as needed, that is actually pretty dang massive right there, and that can be the kind of thing that turns the tide of a fight, particularly in your case with the array of buffs that you have or debuffs. You could do a whole lot of damage or a whole lot of good depending on what exactly you need at a given moment. Then we go on from Blessing of Fervor over to Divine Power. For 1 minute per caster level, you gain a +1 or a +2 luck bonus on attack rolls, weapon damage rolls, strength checks, and strength-based skill checks for every 3 caster levels, which will max out at a +6 or a +7 with the Fate's Favored trait, which we probably want to pick up with this class and this particular build, because a luck bonus is a pretty significant bonus. There's not a whole ton of different sources of luck bonuses, and even then, this is going to be a pretty good top contender overall for applying a luck bonus to yourself, considering that this goes on to attack rolls and weapon damage rolls. That will be huge, and also this spell in particular is why we're not incredibly worried about maxing out our strength score with this stat, or with this particular build, because this spell will give you a pretty significant bonus. And, you know, the fighter may not want the Gauntlets of Ogre Strength anymore because they found a belt that applies bonuses to 2 of their physical stats, but you could still benefit from that kind of an item as well if you really want to lean more into your melee combat prowess. Then we have freedom of movement, even though if you are picking out domains that give this either as an ability or a bonus spell, this may still be worth preparing a little bit more often. Again, it's going to, how much depends on how frequently you're anticipating needing it, but this can still be an incredible spell that saves you and your allies pretty frequently. For 10 minutes per caster level, the target creature touched can move and attack normally, even under magic effects that normally impede such movement. All grapple checks fail, while the target's escape artist or maneuver checks to escape will succeed. So this is a huge benefit, an incredible defensive buff that allows you to escape certain enemies' significant grappling abilities, whether it's an NPC that has been built and spec'd into grappling as a means of, say, shutting down wizards or any other spellcasters, or even, you know, if you're fighting, say, something like a kraken or another creature with a significant grapple bonus. This will help to keep you alive, because in particular, when you get access to 4th level spells, the kinds of creatures that can grapple you pretty easily are the kind of creatures you really don't want grappling you. I'm thinking about a lot of different just devour attempts where players are consumed whole and dealt horrific amounts of damage, but that is again going to depend on your campaign overall. Then we have Summon Monster 4, which, again, if you've been following this guide, is something we are leaning into as a force multiplier kind of effect. Summon creatures at a point within 25 feet plus 5 feet every 2 caster levels. Is summoning either a giant scorpion, hound archon, grizzly bear, or medium elemental, or 1d3 creatures from Summon Monster 3, or 1d4 plus 1 creatures from Summon Monster 2 on, so including Summon Monster. This is going to put a significant number of bodies on the battlefield. Really, you don't need to worry about summoning from Summon Monster 1. Just Summon Monster 2 is fine. 1d4 plus 1. The creatures are going to be overall of better quality than what you find on Summon Monster 1. But bear in mind that, again, with our feat selection, we are picking up more creatures than normal. Not a whole lot more, just one more, but still, it's another body on the battlefield. It's another way of doing crowd control, extra damage, and also absorbing and eating attacks or hits that land on them. So that is just a net win for you and your party all the way around, particularly if you position well enough to give the rogue or the vigilante a nice flanking bonus to let them get their precision damage dice out. Then, for some spells that are kind of situational or you'd probably be better off avoiding, we first have Quieting Weapons. Target one natural or manufactured weapon per 3 caster levels, and they make no sound as part of their normal functions. For example, a bite attack will make no sound, but the attacker can still vocalize. They can still make noise that's readily perceptible. Target struck must make a will save or be unable to make a sound louder than a whisper. That sounds fantastic, except the perception DC to hear it is a 10. So before we apply any potential bonuses, they have a 50-50 chance of hearing the sound. That's not very incredible right there. If anything, I would recommend to DMs, just to give this a little bit more oomph, is to make the perception DC based off of the caster level, the save DC for the spell. In that case, it'd be, DC 10 plus wisdom modifier plus the level of the spell. Some combination of things like that. That seems reasonable. It's at least better than what the perception DC is now. Now, an exception to this would be if you're in campaigns that are emphasizing a lot of skullduggery, a lot of stealth, cloak and dagger, some lateral combat kind of maneuvers that you and the party execute. Then this may still bump up, because even though that's not a great difficulty to contend with, it's still an additional roll that has to be made for other people to be hearing these stealth attacks that you and your party could be landing. So an additional roll is still going to increase the odds of the roll being bad. So it's going to be worth it in that setting, in that kind of a situation and campaign. But otherwise, without something bumping up that DC for perception, this just is kind of okay. It's if you have to kind of a thing. Next, though, something to just completely avoid is Bloat Bomb. I should note, though, I really like this. It fits the image for so many different kinds of clerics, of necromancers. But you touch target creature, and on a failed fortitude save, if their hit dice equal half your level or less, it dies. Then for 1 minute per caster level, the next creature to touch the corpse causes it to explode in a 10-foot burst, dealing 3d6 acid damage with a reflex save for half. So you can already see what makes this so bad. First, the target has to fail their fortitude save, and their hit dice have to equal half your level or less. So that's 2 things that have to be cleared just for this to even apply. And then when it dies, and then after that, for 1 minute per caster level, there has to be another creature that comes and touches the corpse, which that could very well be your allies. Sure, you'd probably warn them, hey, wait a few minutes for that to diffuse, otherwise it is going to burst and make a nasty mess all over you. But, oh man, that's just all of that for that payoff of 3d6 acid damage. I mean, it's nice that it's acid damage, because there's not a lot of creatures out there that have some ready-to-go resistances or immunity to acid damage, but then they also get a reflex save for half for 3d6, topping out at, 18 damage on a maxed out roll. That's pretty terrible. And then reflex save for half, 9 damage. How many creatures at this level can eat 9 damage easily? It's staggeringly bad. Definitely increase the damage, either the damage dice or the number of dice. I'd probably do both, like 5d8, and I'd probably remove the equal half your hit dice or less rule, because then, it's a save or suck, but it's an interesting and pretty thematic save or suck kind of spell that really would fit for a necromancer class, and it would fit in situations where the necromancer's trying to establish a certain sense of uncertainty or fear in their enemies. This is definitely a good NPC spell in that instance, because then the players can see, oh man, we got to be careful looting corpses and stuff. So that's something to keep in mind there. But overall, as a player, you should probably avoid this unless you and your DM can agree to adjustments to this spell. But that's that for now. There are certainly plenty more spells that you want to avoid, some spells that are okay or situationally good, and then there's still some spells that are good to great out there that haven't been covered here. And one thing that has to be made note of, another commenter had pointed out that there are some instances where healing in combat does make sense, and those instances are when you have a part of your team goes down, or if the mission at hand, the quest at hand, has to do with keeping an NPC alive and they bite the bullet on an attack roll, but they're still working their way into the negatives, you can still save them, then yeah, it makes sense from a roleplay, from a complete the mission objective kind of sense, that you would want to heal that target, you'd want to heal that ally that plays such a critical role, or you want to keep them on their feet just so that way you have some slightly better chance at dealing with the opposition in front of you. Those instances it makes sense, but that's where it's handy that, again, if you're playing a good aligned or at least positive energy channeling cleric, your ability to swap out any of your prepared spell slots for a spontaneous casting of a level relevant cure wounds spell, whether it's cure light wounds, cure moderate wounds, cure serious wounds. These spells are great situationally, and they have the perfect mechanic backing them up to help make them useful in those situational instances. So that's just something to bear in mind, although a lot of the time you're probably still going to find it more effective to keep your healing spells used through wands, through potions, and use them outside of combat if you have to, rather than in the midst of it. So that's just something to keep in mind. That's my 2 cents there. Of course, certain situations might be very, very different, like there's not a whole lot of healing, or your DM has introduced, let's say, mechanics where the more hit point damage you take, the more penalties you just naturally accrue that are throwing you off, representing the injury and how tiring even fighting for a few minutes can be. Then in that instance, healing spells take a much greater priority. But what do you think? Go on down to the comments below and let me know your thoughts. Did you like today's video? Did you dislike it? I know I got a little bit rambly there at the end, trying to find the words. Is definitely a stream of consciousness kind of thing I did there, but it still is something worth talking about, and it should re-emphasize that there's really no one way to look at this. You just have to look at the situation as it is, the gaming as it is, and then apply your intuition, your sense, your experience, and how you want to roleplay it. So just bear that in mind with any guides that you find on the internet, including these ones. But with all that said, I've been your host, Jordan, your master of lore and storyteller extraordinaire. Thank you all so very much for your time. Good gaming to you all, folks, and you all have yourselves a good night.